Aloha and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about advanced string formatting. So we're going to be talking about field width, aligning text, and floating point precision. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull up our handy dandy VS Code and start. So let's take a look here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is field width. So we've learned how to do printing formatted strings before. So let's just recap that. That's we've got string equals, let's say, John, my name. And then we're going to have a formatted string. It's going to start with the F. Then we're going to have the single quote. And then in brackets, we put the variable that we want printed out. And then we have the rest of our text and the single quote and the parentheses. So when we hit play on that and run it, it says John is my name. That's kind of what we expect here. So now what we can also do to make this interesting is we can specify the width of our text or the width of our field that we're going to be printing out, the width of the variable we're going to be printing out. So as you see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 letters in John. And let's say we want to make a formatted space so it's a little bit larger than that. Why? Well, you can do it as you looked and saw in the book. They have a nice example where they have printed out a roster, I think, and with soccer players and their goals and everything else. So when you're printing out a nice little chart like that, you want to be able to have everybody lined up just neatly. So using things like the field width helps us do that. So we're going to do something here. We're going to use a field width specifier here. So the way we do this is in our formatted string, right after the variable that we're going to be putting in there, we put a colon, and then we have a number, and that number is the width of our space that we're going to take up in the string. So if we hit play here, we get John, and you notice that we have a lot of space here, is my name. So that allows us to print out over and over. So we could do it using different names. If we were to just repeat this over and over, actually, let's go ahead and make a little bit of a, let's make a list here. So we're going to say our list equals, first name is going to be John. Then we're going to have, John. We're going to have Sue. That's a shorter name. Then we're going to have Maximilian, just because that's a really long name. Not that I know anybody with that name, but anyways, we'll have these 3 names. Then we're going to loop through it. Let's say for name in our list, colon, then we're going to print out this. So we're going to have it go through each time, and it's not going to be string here, it's going to be name. So we're going to print it out, and what we'll see is it lines up nicely. So let's go down here, let's clear this screen, and we hit print, and notice how we have it nicely spaced. So if we have somebody with a long name, it'll fit in here. The only thing is when you're doing something like this and you're coming up with a chart, you're gonna have to think in your head, okay, what is probably the max number of characters I'll need for this thing to print out? If you're doing first name and last name, you have to kind of think, okay, what's the theoretical maximum number of characters you're gonna see in a first name and in a last name or something like that? And you got to count, remember your edge cases, because you're always going to have a kamaka viva ole in there somewhere. So always think about, how am I going to account for that space there? So remember that we're going to use, when we do get ready to set our width specifications, it's that colon and then the 16. So that's our handy dandy little example here. Now let's go ahead, and I want to comment out this code and move on to the next examples. So the next thing we're going to talk about is aligning the text. When we align text, we can actually specify which side we want that text to come, on the left or the right, or if we want to center that text. So the way we do that is we use right after the colon and before the number for the field width, we're going to use either a less than, greater than, or a caret. And what that does is the less than tells us to move it to the left, to align it to the left. The greater than is going to be align it to the right. And you can see that it's kind of pointing in those directions. And then the one that's just straight in the middle is going to be straight up, the caret, which is pointing straight up. So that is theoretically what we're going to do here. So let's uncomment this code and see what happens when we say whatever is my name. So let's go ahead and, we've got a string uncommented up there, so this should work. So again, let's clear it down here and just make it look pretty. So when we run it, so the less than moves it all the way over here to the left. The greater than moves it all the way over to the right. And then the caret puts it straight up in the middle of the string. And this is good when you're going to be formatting a lot of things in a list. So when you're making a chart, when you're making like, we did a seating chart earlier in a lesson. I think it was like a concert seating chart, and where you had to set up like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 1A, 1B, 1C, things like that. This would be something nice for setting up a seating chart like that. So keep that in mind. You can align your text. So what we've done here is we've specified a width, and then over here we've got the alignment for it. Now, what else can we do? Well, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the fill. What is fill? Well, when your variable doesn't take up all the space that you've defined for that width, it automatically puts in spaces for you. Like if you look down here, it has all spaces. It has spaces where there wasn't anything to put in there. So that's the default behavior. It can also put in a specified character if you want to put something else in there. So let's take a look over here. I like doing this one. When I'm printing out some things, sometimes I just want to put like a hyphen on the edge. So if we were to put a hyphen in the beginning or the end, it wouldn't look that good. But if you're centering your text, look at this. So you can have it on both sides. You can have it on both sides of your text. So that's the nice way of putting something on the front and the back. So one place that you'll probably use this is when you're formatting numbers. It's great to have leading zeros. So leading zeros, I created a little example here, and it uses the random function. And don't really worry about the random function. All the random function is going to do is grab us a number. So let me just explain a little bit. So we're importing the random module that has all the functionality for that. And then over here, we're saying random.randint. And all that really means is, hey, random module, I want to generate a random integer, and I want it to be between 0 and 99,999. You can specify any number you want here. You can make it, 999,999. It doesn't really matter. So you put in your number there, and it'll choose a number between 0 and that number. And so I just wanted to give us a big number, something random, because what we're going to do is we're going to print a bunch of these numbers in a row. Actually, let's just do 10 for now. We don't really need 100. So let's do 10. And then as we go through, we're setting up a loop. It's going to go 0 to 9. So we're going to go through it. Each time we're going to generate a number, and we're going to format it over here. So we're going to format it. And this is how we set up the, remember we set up the fill character is going to go after the colon and before your alignment. So what we're saying here is we're going to align the number. We're going to use 6 spaces for it. We're going to align it to the right, and everything on the left, if we don't have a number that's actually 6 big, we're going to take zeros and put it on the left-hand side of it. So the 0 here specifies that we're putting in we're going to fill in zeros. And this is really neat because sometimes you're doing something and you want all the numbers to kind of have those leading zeros. So if you had like a 99, but you're doing 4 places, you want that 0099. So this will give that to us. So if we hit, let's go ahead and clear. So after clearing, let's hit the play. And sure enough, we're getting randomly generated numbers. And sadly, I don't have any here that are, oh, and I know why, because we're creating a number that's so large that probably the majority is going to be kind of out of there. So let's make it a little bit smaller. Let's say it's 9,000, or let's just do 999. Then we hit play, and we notice that our numbers are a lot smaller, but we're getting the 3 leading zeros there. Let's try making it 9,999. So, oh, here's one. Here's one that's smaller than 1,000. So we get the 3 leading zeros. Here we have the 2 leading zeros. Yeah, when we're just generating 10 here, if we did 100, or let's say even 1,000, we might get more that have some variance there. Here's 2 zeros, 2 zeros, 2 zeros. Yeah, mostly 2 zeros here. So Sadly, we don't have any real tiny numbers like 5 or 10 or something like that. But in general, you can see what's happening. We're putting the leading zeros on the left-hand side. So that's one of the useful things for using the fill characters. So in general, you're probably going to want to use spaces, but if you're doing numeric stuff, you may want to actually fill in zeros there. So that's one way of doing that. And then the last thing we're going to talk about here is floating point precision. And everybody likes pi, so let's talk about pi. So we're going to import the math module. And from that, we're going to take math.pi, which is, it's a pretty good approximation of pi. Pi, as you know, is a never-ending number. It can't actually be described as a ratio between two numbers, but a close approximation of that is 22 divided by 7. But 22 divided by 7 is going to give us a number. So what we're doing in this example here is we're saying pi is, and when we're going to print the number that the module gives us as a good approximation. And then we're going to take 22 divided by 7 and show you what that kind of looks like. And then we're going to take that kind of what it looks like number with all the decimal places that Python gives us. And then we're going to shorten that. And we're going to shorten it just to 2 places. So when we want to use precision, when we want to specify the precision, by precision, I mean the number of decimal places that we're going to show. What we're going to do is we're going to use the dot. So after the colon, we're going to use a dot and then the number of places that we want, and then the F. So dot number of places we want to show F. So when we run this here, we're going to get the 2 decimal points for the floating point right here, the 2, 4. We can change this to 5, and it doesn't look that pretty because we're used to like 3.14159 is pi. So I'd rather prefer to put real pi over here. So let's put real pi over here and see the real numbers. So what it's doing here is if you've got, well, for example, if you've got a situation where you don't have, let's say you have 10 numbers beyond the decimal place, but you're only specifying, let's say, 3 decimal places. What's going to happen is it'll do the first 2, and then it's going to round for that 3rd place. So if you're doing 5 and you've got 10, it's going to give you the 4 first ones, and then it'll round into the 5th one. So it's going to do a rounding like that. If, on the other hand, you had a situation where you had a number here, let's say we just said pi equals 3.14, and then we wanted to say something like pi is, and then we want to print that out, but we're going to print that to, let's say we want to print that to 6 decimals. Well, we've only specified 2, so what do you think is going to happen in this case? Well, because there's nothing after that, spaces wouldn't really seem good. You'd think, well, it's a number, let's put in zeros. And that's exactly what it does. So if we hit play here, it says we get the 2 that it has, and then anything after 2, it's going to put in zeros for us. So remember, if you have less numbers of precision than is actually in the number, it's going to round the last number it has. Otherwise, if it has too many, it's going to go ahead and give you zeros for the numbers after the last digit of precision. So that is floating point precision. So I hope this has been an interesting lesson in string formatting. This is kind of getting into how you can make fine adjustments if you're going to be printing out charts, if you're going to be printing out things that you need to line up very nicely. These are some tools in that toolkit to help you do that. So again, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, set up a Zoom chat. I'd be happy to get together with you and go over this with you. So barring that, I'll see you in the next lesson. Take care and stay in touch.